3, 2, 1. So now that you're now taking this out, you're a consultant now taking this out to other companies.
Right.
What would you? I think you've done a good job of articulating the benefits of what a sort of a passionate enterprise tribe can do for a company.
Right.
But how does one get started down this path?
So first thing is to assess where you are with your community. How many members do you have? How active are the members? And to find that there's like a community life cycle. So from lurker to, or also you go through it when you join a new community, you lurk first, then you post a question, then you answer a question, and then you do webinars or whatever. So it is something that you assess first. Okay, where am I in that life cycle? And that is number one. Number two is that you get executive buy-in. So have someone who is giving you air coverage and there will things come up where people are like, wait a sec, how is that possible? And where you need someone to say, yes, that's okay. So my best example at the beginning, when we started SDN with blogging, and there was a blog post back in the day at the beginning, ABAP 00, these are the challenges of ABAP 00. And I got a phone call, hey, take that down. This is a SAP property, and how come that there's anything negative out there? And we had to fight that and say, look, if you want to create a real community, you have to have voices, and you have to then post counter arguments. And they were like, what? We need to now someone who is like a high paying expert to answer this blog post. And I said, yeah. And so then Horst Keller, originally, who was like the guy around ABAP back then, ABAP books already, wrote a blog post around arguing why ABAP 00 is good. And that was the kickoff to Horst Keller being active and seeing, oh yeah, here are other ABAP community, and got active and promoted his books and is still really active. And so that is number two. So I was fortunate that my boss back then said, yeah, this is how it is. We continue on that road. So
right.
That is number two. And then what I do these days, and which I didn't do at SAP with the SAP mentors, is create a steering committee. And nowadays, SAP mentors have a steering committee with all parties involved in the organization: support, marketing, product, sales even, and community and all that. So, and have key people there that understand the community aspect. And nowadays it's not that hard to get these people, but these are then for you the people that help you select the right mix of your tribe. And these are then also the people that open the door when you say, okay, now we have the tribe, let's do a webinar and talk about where we are, and let's create that network so that better products are developed. Or then, okay, marketing, what is your plan? Or here, community, tell us about the next 12 months, and then they know and can influence and improve. And that is where that great effect comes in. So by having them part of the product lifecycle, part of the community decisions, they get more active, and they are then also more passionate around the product and help you be the best that the company can be.
Right. And in a piece you sent me recently about bringing out the passion in the community, you listed 4 things, some of which we've already covered. Be playful, give them a voice, give them status, make it possible for them to shine, and bring them together face to face. You've covered a lot of that. Were there any other things you wanted to mention there?
So, yeah, to round it up, I think that then, so once you know where you are in your community development, when you have your executive sponsorship, then find and your steering committee, then get nominations from the community for the first tribe members, and then select them, and then create an identity around them. So with GE, they have the Predix platform, which they call the internet, the industrial Internet of Things. So every sensors that GE products have go through that Predix platform. And so GE people, turbines and trains are builders. So we created then Predix Builders as one of the elements, as the anchor of, I can identify with that. So create an identity, and the community can help you with that. And do that with working out loud is one of the elements that help you with that. Don't go with a fully set thing. No, say, oh, this is what I'm thinking. What do you? And then take that input and make it the community part.
Take advantage of the so-called iterative dialogue that you're having to make improvements as you go, rather than roll things out the door that are tone deaf to the customers and the community. Totally. The only other thing I would add, based on, since I'm a member of the media, I think about this a lot, is these folks are really influencers, just like media members are influencers. And I think they should all be treated with similar approach when it comes to media. Essentially, you should learn to perceive these folks as members of the media, because that's really what they are. And so you would never tell one of the members of the media, you can't write that blog. You don't get to control the media. That's not how it works. Now, certainly you can have understandings, like, for example, in my industry, we will be told this is under embargo until this date, or there's an NDA on this piece of information, and you honor that. But as far as like, oh, I didn't like what you said in this blog post, sorry, that's out of bounds to me. And I think I've seen some of these programs get into trouble by thinking that these people are not part of that, but they are. They're part of the media. It's very simple. So they should have free and open expression, unfettered access, just like the media. But at the same time, you can hold them accountable to make sure they get the facts right and everything else.
And there's another element. So you have your big event, and there is a press program, there is an analyst program. Have your tribe as part of that, especially in the evening when there are the reception, because you can only benefit that these top community influencers, these experts, are mingling with press and analysts, because they can answer the deeper question, and it gives you it proves that you are not hiding anything, more or less. And the other thing that let me finish, that the mentors always told me is, at the end they want that SAP is successful, because then they are successful too, and this is why they are the harshest critics.
Right.
But on the other hand, they are then also the ones that hold up the flag.
Well, yes, and having been in a lot of those sessions with some of the more well-known analysts, I can vouch for how much the analysts appreciate being mixed up with subject matter experts like mentor or community leaders, because those people just know the product in a much deeper way, and they can ask different questions, and they can verify certain things that the analyst, who has a much broader view, doesn't know. And for the community leader, they get a much broader view. So that dialogue is one of the benefits of creating a true influencer program that doesn't separate people into these little camps so much, but mixes them together where they can add a lot more value.
or a benefit for the executives as well. There's a question around, what about your app store, da da da, and then the executives can say, oh, over here is a mentor who is using the app store. What is your experience?
Now, and having said that, and I don't want to get too far into this, but just because they're a member of the media, it doesn't mean that you can't offer them training. And I think that's one thing that if you're worried about these kinds of things, you can certainly I'm not saying don't put people through some training around relating to executives, relating to the media. I think that's totally fair game. I'm just saying don't muzzle them, put them as part of the media in general.
Great point. So yeah, media training, absolutely great advantage and benefit. But with the understanding, hey, it's your voice, but here is things that help you work with.
Right. And keep in mind, some of these folks, these experts are from customer sites, and that's enormously valuable to have their voices in these discussions as well. And also small partners and individual developers, and all those voices are so important in any kind of a discussion with executives. So, okay, Mark, now I've got a hard question for you. You and I are both wary of over-analyzing metrics around community work because we know that there comes a point where putting things under like a so-called KPI microscope can really drain the energy out of what you're doing. But you know, we're both enterprisey guys. We understand that you have to eventually be able to point back to real tangible ROI and success, right? So what are your favorite ways of trying to measure the progress of a community initiative?
So one of the measures that I used was how many SAP Insight tracks were happening per year. So because it is a big effort, and it is something that really makes a huge difference for that local community, again, network creation. So that for me is a big part of it. The second part of it is success stories, capturing and sharing. So if you have impact, capture it and share it, and in a blog post, in a webinar, however, and that is for me the second big measure. You can go into a community in general. You can measure how many problems are solved and things like that. And I think the community roundtable does a good job in regards to these other measurements. But for the advocacy group, for me, these are the two big ones. Meetups, are they self-organized, and how many worldwide? That is a great pulse check. And two, the success stories. And that is something that you have to put, make it easy and ping people and have a form that people can fill out. Hey, something happened here, quickly wrote down, and then have someone else follow up and actually write it.
Well, that was one thing I noticed that seemed to get better as in the last years I was a part of the mentor program, was much more documenting those so-called magic moments or great moments as they were happening.
Right.
More attention to that rather than like waiting. And what happened last year, right? Does anyone have a picture or a video? No one does. Instead, like filming it as you go, tracking it, sharing it as you go, creating slide decks to document all that stuff. I would also add that for people who are a little more into like hard ROI numbers, other things I think can work pretty well is you can probably document the impact on support costs over time. You can probably get into lead attribution a little bit as well. You have to be careful. But if you develop pretty sophisticated lead attribution schemes, you can trace some of that back to some of these events and some of the kinds of dialogue that happens. Yep. And I would also add customer satisfaction surveys to the mix as well. build in community questions into those surveys so that you can monitor how people rate the community experience over time and how important it is to them.
Yep.
All right, I want to ask you a little bit about your decision to leave SAP, but is there anything else you want to talk about first?
No, I'm fine.
All right, so you were at SAP for a really, really long time, and was that scary to put that behind you? That must have been a really tough decision, but you did it so decisively at the time. How hard was that?
I just thought that the success I had with the SAP mentors, I just saw the big need to bring that to other organizations and to not only do it at SAP. And so I thought that was a good moment to do that.
So is it really more about, for you, is it more about the opportunity outside of SAP, or did you also have this sort of sense that you know, well, it's just like on sports teams, right, where after a manager's been a manager for a number of years, it's kind of like, well, maybe it's time for a new voice, or it's time, I've done what I can with here. Was that part of it too, or?
Yeah, I think that new thoughts had to come in, and new ways to do stuff. Otherwise, it would have continued to be just the Mark Finnern show, as they sometimes said.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you say to other people that are sort of perhaps a little stuck in their current situation, or realizing that it's time to move on, but they're a little wary of moving from something established to hanging up that sort of free shingle? What would you say?
Try it out. Do some good groundwork so that you are not totally in so that you have some business lined up, and then do it and try it out. You only live once.
And what have you learned so far? I mean, you've been independent now, you're moving in on 2 years.
Right.
Are you seeing that other organizations indeed are wrestling with similar issues and needs? Like, what are you finding so far?
Absolutely. I mean, there are many more of these tribes coming up at organizations. What I see is often that it is from a department out, like marketing department is driving it, and then it is a marketing department driven thing. And the big advantage of your community tribe, as I envision it, or as I see the biggest advantage is then that it is going beyond the department, beyond the silos. So, and that is not easy to set that up, that there is traction in the development of product, there's traction in marketing, there is in support, in training, education, all that, certification. So to be able to create an enterprise tribe that is firing on all of these cylinders, that is where the magic is happening, and where I think is enormous potential. So, and you read more and more about the networked organization, that it goes away from this hierarchies and silos, and more you are doing ad hoc, community-based solutions around business problems. And so I think that the community management will get a much higher viewpoint in the organization as something that helps an organization to stay competitive and stay successful.
You kind of made me smile when you were talking about this, because I've been to a number of shows where there was an active community, and usually the community room is like buried in like the bowels of the conference somewhere. Like it's it's like in the basement, or it's in some weird unheated room or whatever. And there's always a lot of really passionate people there, but they also don't always seem like they get out very much.
Right.
And what you're describing just now is totally the opposite of that, right? It's that sense that wherever you would go within a conference, you would see the presence of such individuals. They would be sort of, I don't want to sound negative, but they will sort of infest everything. And it wouldn't be so much a room in the way back somewhere, you know?
Yeah. I wrote a blog post about how to get the best keynote. Well, what we did with the mentors is we pinged the mentors. What do you want to hear on the keynote? And selected that, and then the people that are working on the keynote were then having a session with the mentors and going through the points. Okay, this is why is that interesting? Oh yeah, and is there anybody who could present? And then have these community members do present what they have done as customers or as a partner solution. And that makes such a difference then to the keynote. And so any aspects where you can bring the customer and the community voice in, do it. And it is that competitive advantage where everything else more or less can be copied and made cheaper and so on. But if you have a strong engaged community where people feel at home and feel passion, and my latest realization is also that, so for many years I was focusing on passion, but what is really bringing out the passion in people is if you can align what you're doing with purpose. So back in the day, and that was always the cool thing that Marilyn Pratt was doing, well, she brought in the Doctors Without Borders real world data to her data visathon. So the experts were coming together and hacking around, doing data visualization around real world data from Doctors Without Borders. And people were super excited in being part of that because they knew, oh, what I'm doing right now is influencing and helping Doctors Without Borders to be more effective or efficient. And so it wasn't about, a hackathon around, oh yeah, help us improve our software, but it was improve the world. And that purpose of the people to tap into that brings out the passion, and that gives you deep engagement. And I have a blog post in the making around that one.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on. What is your blog URL for people?
It's Finnern.com.
Perfect. And good luck with your goals for the playful enterprise. That's a high bar you've set. If you can make the enterprise playful, you will have, I think, accomplished quite a lot in one lifetime. So, are we going to do our outro?
Do you want to have the outro?
Yeah. Wait, do you have something to say first, or?
No. I thought he wanted to also ask about SAP some more, but we can do that in another podcast.
Well, yeah, I don't know if is there anything more that we covered a lot of the history. Was there anything more you wanted to talk about, or?
But I think that being away from SAP a little bit, one thing that I realize, and I'm not 100% sure whether SAP is realizing that. I think that realization of, we have to switch to a network organization, and that is crossing boundaries not only between the silos within a company, but also to the partners, to the customers, to individual consultants, which we did with the mentors. And I think that SAP has an enormous opportunity to be that connector and to be that trusted advisor, and so that they say, hey, we as SAP, we know the world is accelerating change is coming like crazy, but if you are working with us, we will make sure that you are successful. And I think more or less finding these win-win situations and more or less make sure that we don't squeeze our customers or SAP, to have the quarterly success, focus on being that trusted advisor and have that strong community that is supporting that. And I would like to see more of that happening. I think SAP is doing a lot there, but I think there could be so much more in that regards, and to make sure that we pick up the SAP customers where they are and bring them into the new world and help them be successful there. And when they are successful, SAP is successful. And I think with Ariba, that is creating that business network, again, worldwide, enormous opportunities are there. And so that is something that I think could be stressed a little bit more.
Yeah, I think just like most companies that I deal with, I think SAP has negative tendencies that concern me and tendencies I really like. And I think what you and I were talking about, the history, is a lot of the best of what SAP has been. People have written off SAP a lot of times as a legacy player, right. And SAP is trying to change that from a technology perspective. But I would encourage SAP to think about this from a cultural perspective as well, because you were a leader in community and transparency and edgy, open dialogue. And you don't want to back down from that just because some of the key players in that have moved on from the organization and so on. Right. And I will say that I run into a lot of people at SAP who aren't comfortable with more of what you're talking about, the more sort of network, sort of trusting, sort of open thinking kind of things. Right. And I think it takes a certain cultural comfort level to do that. And so hopefully SAP can find its mojo with that, because there's a pretty proud history there, to be honest. I mean, when you look back, they're one of the first companies to do it. Right. Now I think you can point to a lot of open source communities that might have actually sort of moved ahead in certain ways. And it's encouraging to see SAP engaging more with open source communities on a variety of fronts as well. So I think, as far as SAP is concerned, I think there's some different forks in the road ahead, and there's still a lot of opportunity, but I would want to see some bold initiative around that. Any other comments on that?
No, I totally agree. There's an enormous opportunity there, and SAP to win or to lose, and I hope they choose wisely.
Indeed. So, Mark, for the last time from the treehouse, this is.
Yeah, I'm more getting into the witness protection program, into the shade, and but over here, extra for today, I hung up the cuckoo clock.
Here we go.
There it is. Is he coming up?
Yeah. That basically means if you made it to the end, you're nuts. Congratulations. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, that was good times.
Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
That's good, buddy.